So I said to him, you know, they came, it was almost noon. You weren't ready.
Now that we're on the record, this has been the time set and notice for which is given for the request of Dylan Dewey, requesting a variance involving construction at 676 Sun Sky Lake Drive in Woodlands, Utah. It is set before a hearing examiner. My name is Judy Lieber, and I have been appointed by the city to conduct these hearings. As you may or may not know, as you may or may not know, a hearing examiner in this, I have a very limited scope of responsibility. Your city council is the one that is responsible for enacting your ordinances. And
Don't blame me. He's on the city council.
So I have a limited delegation with certain standards that have been set up by the statute of whether or not variances could be considered. And I have to go through various elements to make those kinds of findings. And if I can't make those findings, then the variance, won't be granted. Because I don't have the authority, nor would you want to have an outsider have that authority to change the ordinances. And I take that responsibility seriously because I'm not a council person, but I've been council for cities and know that there's a difference between a legislative function versus a quasi judicial function, which I'm serving in this capacity. So the record, it will be complete, and what we'd like to do now, and I'll give you an overview, is to have each of you indicate who's present, so we have that for the record. And then, because it's an application by Mr. Dewey, you'll get to start and go. Now I have before me an application that was filed together with what appears to be a plat map. Very small and very hard to read, but they're here. You should also understand that for the last hour, I have been driving around the streets of the city, because part of the findings that will have to be made is what are the general circumstances, whether they're unusual, and the characteristics. And so I also take that seriously and have been driving all in the area along the hills. And that's why I've seen your residents that were out. I have them at my house occasionally. So I don't have any more roses to show because they have enjoyed them all. So at that point, if you will each take a turn and indicate for the record your name and the function that you're going to be serving here today.
Dylan Dewey, and I'm the owner builder.
Okay.
Ben Hilliard, here in his capacity of also as a builder.
And are you a builder related to this project?
Yes, I'm building it with Dylan.
Okay.
Corbett Stevens, Public Works Director, Building Official for the City of Woodland Hills.
I'm Wayne Granson I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission for the City of Woodland Hills.
Okay. And the record will reflect it's being recorded by our city recorder. And thank you for taking care of that. At this point, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn the time over to you, Mr. Dewey, to focus on what your request is and your justification.
Can I do this out of order? I've got 2 snowplows that are dead. We can't drive them. And I've still got to make a trip to the water tanks before the end of the day, and it's getting dark and colder fast. Can I go first, or is that not allowed?
It is allowed. It takes it out of the context, but you know what? We'll deal with it. So in terms of going forward, Mr. Corbett, one of the things that you do now, okay, I have questions because I've reviewed it and I have lots of questions. And I don't know whether that's something that Mr. Franson will be able to respond to or whether you will be able to respond to.
Okay. I mean, if it's.
No, so if you want me to go ahead and do that now, that kind of jumps your gun, and it may be information that you have, but it was information that when I read it, I just said, I gotta ask questions because it's not in the application. first question that I would have, and you'll have to tell me who did the review, is there was nothing in the application that I saw that showed cross-section showing how the height of the proposed structure, I mean, there was a picture of the proposed structure, but there was not any cross-section, data showing what the height is, where it is, and how, and where it's out of sync, where it's very, why it isn't complying. And that it is in the application, so if you want to answer that before you go, I need that. I will also need a recommendation of whether or not the city is making a recommendation on it.
Do we have that in city inspector, Jody?
This is my understanding, and I'm jumping is done because we want to do this.
Right.
To accommodate you, is that there are 2 variances that are being involved, if not 3. There's one of the height. There, which is supposed to be, as I understand it, 35 from the lower of the natural grade or
Finished grade.
finished grade. The other one is dealing with the grade of the driveway. And the third item is dealing with the,
Driveway setback.
yes, the front yard setback.
Right.
Now, and while you're looking at your other things about, or while she's pulling those up, can you explain to me or tell me on the front yard setback? As I understood this application, the front yard setback, we're talking about the building because there weren't any site plans showing that. If that was the front facade, entering into the required, as I understand, it's a 20-yard front yard setback.
Actually, in that zone, he's a 50-foot front yard setback.
It's a
And
50.
that's not the issue. The only setback issue is the driveway, where the driveway sits from the road into the lot.
So city code requires the driveway maintain a minimum distance from a side yard property line, of 20
It's 20 feet.
20 feet.
Which would be the traditional sideline anyway, side yard anyway, right? Or are they 15?
No, well, the building setback is in that zone, the building setback is 15 feet. And I think this is someplace where our code contradicts or creates an issue because you can have a structure, you can have a garage 15 feet from the property line, but your driveway has to stay 20 feet from the property line,
Okay,
which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mr. Corbett, okay, I'm showing you a cross section, which is part of the application. And I don't know if you.
I've seen them.
Can you put that one up on Jody,
That's what I'm gonna do.
if we can, so that we are very clear about what, or if it's the portion of the driveway on a flat basis, or if it's something else, if it's the garage that was going in.
Well, it's, so the building, he's maintained, from what I remember on the site plan, the building, he has maintained a setback from the property line, the required setback from the property line.
Actually, in there.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's just,
right.
it's just this right here. We just need 20 feet between the property line here and where this starts. And it's.
Oh,
not
the
20 feet.
entrance.
Yeah, just.
Oh, so you're talking here.
Yep.
Yeah, because I was looking over here and thinking,
No.
that didn't make sense, and
No,
it didn't make
it's all
sense.
this is where it's supposed to.
And
be. It's
this,
just part.
and this can, having the driveway in the front yard setback isn't any problem.
No, because you have to have a driveway to your house.
Well, I understand
So-
that. I was just trying to make clear that I was understanding.
It's the side setback from the property line for the driveway itself.
For the
For
entrance.
entrance into here.
Yeah, to
That's,
make,
is that, am I doing it right?
Yep, yep,
Okay.
exactly.
And that should be
20 feet.
20 feet, which I'm assuming is this dotted line around, if that was the side. That's. what
Yeah,
you're doing.
that's the building setback, is
That's
that
the
dotted
ones-
line that's 20 or 15 feet on the sides and 50 feet on the front and 30 feet on the rear. That's the building setback.
Okay, and you're saying that the code would require that same distance for the entrance to a driveway?
Well, the code requires that driveway maintains a 20-foot setback from the property line, from the side property line. Only the side property line.
Okay, so if I were to take that 20-foot line and extend it up to the road, that's where traditionally under the ordinance, your driveway would have to.
Right, your driveway would have to maintain a 20-foot distance from the side property line. Correct.
And the purpose for that is,
I don't know.
I can explain that a little bit. When that was established years ago, the idea was because of the snow in the wintertime up here, we did not want to provide facilitating blowing snow on a neighbor's property. So that's the reason the driveway setback is 20 feet, meaning that that's probably close to a maximum range of a snow blower. So if somebody's snow blowing their driveway, they're not blowing snow onto their neighbor's property. It's being retained on their property. And that's the reason that there's quite a 20-foot, quite a distance in setback from the property line of that driveway.
Also, when that ordinance was created, the PUD did not exist. And so when the ordinance was created, all properties required a 30-foot side yard setback.
For the home.
So
for the
but you're
home.
saying that there was a 30-yard set, 30-foot setback, side yard setback, of which 20 was reserved and that the driveway was not supposed to.
Yeah, so your driveway could be 10 foot closer to the property line than the
Yeah.
house. But you couldn't have, but the PUD, the planned unit development didn't exist at the time. And the PUD was approved with 15-foot side setbacks for the structure. But the ordinance requiring the driveway to stay 20 feet from the property line was never amended, never changed to
So-
allow.
So this is not in a PUD.
Yes.
It is in a PUD.
Oh, no, it's not.
Okay, this is a lot that does, so PUD requirements don't apply. Is that correct? Okay, so to be very clear, there's a 20-yard setback. Why is it in here? It must be football time, I'm sorry. 20-foot side yard setback. And you are encroaching how far? It looks pretty much most of it
Yeah, it's gonna be like 5 feet
too.
instead of
5 feet. So you're approaching roughly maybe 50% of that setback.
75.
Yeah, so 75%.
50 to 75%.
And part of the reason is because there's already kind of a driveway cut in to that lot. The lot was actually my parents' property and they put a driveway in. And then we just took it over and we just like to keep it how it is, but it's also because if we move it over at all, it's just gonna make it even steeper. The driveway is steeper, and we're trying to keep the slope down as much as possible, so it's not too steep.
So, okay, so that's the setback first thing we're doing. In terms of the grade, the proposed grade in the permit, does it exceed or is it at where it needs to be?
It's where it needs to be.
It's under
So the-
15%.
Yeah, so
15 max.
currently the driveway is designed at a 15% slope. Right? It's right on 15%.
Yeah, right on 15%.
And to do that, it allows this
It
extra
would require that
width.
variance to the side yard setback,
And what would strict compliance do?
make the driveway too steep or the house unbuildable.
Well,
I mean, that's just my
that's-
opinion.
Okay, you're making jumping. Those are two different conclusions.
Right.
Okay, when you're saying it would make the too steep because it doesn't have enough.
It
depth,
just doesn't have enough distance.
or that could be accomplished by going farther into the lot, is that correct? Going in, making that curve a little,
No, because the steepest part is
No.
right there as it enters.
And the further away you get from the road, you're fighting grade.
on
So from what I could figure, the slope, the property itself slopes about 20%. So the further away you get, the harder it gets, the further away from the road you get. Now you're going perpendicular to the grade. Instead of coming across the front of the property, you're trying to go more parallel with the grade instead of perpendicular.
well, I don't disagree with the fact that steep slopes, but frankly, I have to indicate that from my viewing, much, almost every half of every street that is on a slope.
Yeah.
And those slopes are significant in some places, a little bit more than others. If you're at the top of the hill, less than if you're at the bottom of the hill. But that those slopes are steep. And so I have a hard time finding that there's any unusual circumstance related to this building lot. And I'm concerned about creating And I have to look at it from a standpoint, if I allow this variance, I would then have to be recommending to them and not be surprised that any other lot that was steep would think that they ought to get a variance as well. I have a problem with that.
I'm, forgive me, I'm not trying to defend him. I'm just trying to state facts. I
I
mean,
am too, and that's why I'm saying is,
but part of it, part of the facts is a lot of the properties, the roads are flat. Where, I mean, if most, there's a few where the roads are steep, but they're steep generally in the same direction as the slope of the property. Where this road in front of this house is fairly flat. And the property drops off quite, I mean,
it
it's,
does,
it
but it
drops off
does
quite
on the,
steep.
on the two streets above it and then the street below it.
Right.
They're similar, and
I
that's
mean,
why.
and I don't know if it makes a difference, but the lot next door, we granted a variance for the exact same reason. Because they couldn't make the driveway. I mean, their driveway is still too steep. Their driveway ended up being 20%. But we allowed them to encroach into that setback, that driveway setback from the property line. And they redid their driveway, and the house was already existing. But they redid their driveway and it went from 24%. And by giving them that extra 20 feet, they got it down to 20%, which is still steeper than code allows, and it just happens.
Well, and that was my question, because I saw that house and it looked like it was not too close, but that it was very steep. And so there was a reference in the application to a variance, but it didn't say what the variance was or what it was granted or whether which setback or, you know, it was a little too general in terms of being able to apply or to be.
Yeah,
appreciated. So the
that-
house next door does
The
have
one going uphill or going
Yeah.
northeast.
right around, right
It's-
next to it to the east, right
Yes.
here.
Yes.
I would, see, I drove it
And-
through and I found steep slopes on here and up, you know, all along these roads going up through there. And so,
So the property next door, we allowed a variance and they came right to the property line.
Yeah, I think they're even over a little bit, but
Well, I don't know that they crossed onto your property, but because once you hit the property line, now you're in the right of way. And so they cross that imaginary line that extends the property line out to the back or to the edge of the asphalt. If this is the road and the property line comes in this way, the property line stops back here about 13 feet from the asphalt. And they cross, if this is because this line right here is an imaginary line because it's city right of way.
it's in the city. It's in
But they
easement.
crossed right at the property line and then they continued on that same angle to be in front of his property on the other end of his property.
So you're saying that in terms of the application, a variance was granted for the purpose of allowing driveway to exit and to invade, so to speak, into that required setback, the side yard setback.
Yeah, we let them go all the way to the property corner.
Okay, that is helpful. Can you help me, the other thing, whether it's you or Mr. Branson, in terms of there was, no cross sections dealing with how the height is being calculated or where it's out or where it would be if you strictly had to comply. That was not, there's nothing, as I saw it, or as I
Good.
reviewed it to that effect.
Yeah.
Still working on it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the screen share to work.
All that I have is the
So one of-
site plan here and what I presume is a drawing of the front facade. But not,
So that's not a complete set like this is, just a miniaturized set,
oh, and it's not a bed,
Dylan?
it's just,
that's just the site plan.
that's just the front, and then there's
Well-
one contours, but no cross sections or showing what that height is.
I guess my question then for Dylan is, does she not have everything that's right there?
No, I
Okay,
don't.
all right.
I have probably maybe 3 sheets.
So one of the things that, I mean, we've worked through this a little bit. I mean, Dylan and I have worked through this as far as trying to get it to comply. One of the things that he did was he changed the roof line The trusses used to be a gable that went all the way to the back of the back of the structure. Now he's done a hipped gable on the back end. So that instead of that, can I draw a picture?
Which isn't on this set, this set is the old set before we did the hip state.
Yeah, because, yeah, there was nothing in the application about any attempts. If he were have to strictly comply, what would be required?
Lower the house 2.5 feet.
2.5 more feet. You have to drop the house another 2.5 feet. Right?
Yep.
Which would then
So
push
the back of the house, if this was the deck, and this is the patio, this is the ceiling, the back of the house, you have a gable. So these trusses came this way, all the way to the back of the house. Now what he's done is he's done a girder truss right here. And then he's done a hip roof like that.
Okay, there were no cross sections and no back of the back facade. So we're talking about the back of the house is
2.5 feet.
no. Let me finish my question. Is basically 3 stories out of
No.
grade?
Just two. Back it up.
It's 3. No.
No,
Isn't
the
there a
basement,
lockout grade?
It's 2 in a basement.
Well,
basement.
basements,
It's the
I'm
third.
telling you, I mean,
We
it
count a
counts.
basement as a story up here.
sure, I do too, because you're out of grade and it counts for the requirement. So there's a basement level, a lower that's out of grade, main floor, and something up in the roof, is that right? Because the front facade that you've shown shows 2 stories in the front. Okay, so if you can, Corbett, if you can show me on there, is the front facade as, the only thing which I've seen is the front facade. How high is that? What is the height that you would measure? Do you remember? Do you know?
I was gonna say 27. Only 27, 28 feet. I mean, if it's 27 or 28 feet, and then you add the basement, because now we're looking at the back.
No, I'm not, I'm just saying from this facade.
But no, I'm just saying, so if the front of the house is 27 or 28 feet,
About 10.
then you look at the back of the house, you've got the height of the basement also, which made it too tall. And that's why just by hipping that back roof, it was compliant with the strict requirement. So I'm saying the front of the house is probably only 27 or 28 feet tall.
So that was my question, because there is not in the application explanation where the structure exceeds the height limitation.
Just on the back portion. So the way our code reads is you take the highest of the two of the grade plane. So we take finished grade or natural grade at the front of at the highest point of the structure. And then we take finished grade or natural grade at the lowest point of the structure. And we create this grade plane. And then we say 35 feet. 35 feet. You can't exceed that 35-foot mark. And so
Where is this permit?
then you build the house. And here's the roof. It was just right here that exceeded.
Okay, and are you saying you've modified the plans so that you don't
Yeah,
get that?
and I can show you right here, don't be bring solar.
Have you, so are the plans that he's been showing now, have they eliminated the need for a height variance?
No, not these ones.
No,
Well, that's what he just said.
Not even with the hip, it will not completely not. Right.
okay, so I need to, Corbett, will you stay so we know?
Yeah.
Kind of variance we're
I
talking.
was trying to get out. But
I know.
it's like I only make-
Wish I could say that.
No, and it's.
Oh.
It is. Corbett always has 600 things to do.
This is what my architect drew, and they put.
Wait a minute, which, this is the
That's the
east,
back of it.
This is
this is the east side.
this is looking to, yeah, east side. East
Okay,
side.
so east side, okay, looking and so.
This,
Front is up
isn't
here.
this the front of the house?
Yeah, front
Looking
of
this
the
way,
house,
this is the
yeah.
back of the house up there.
Okay,
So this is that 35-foot line.
And then over here too, and then they kind of cheated it over here, that's why it's.
so,
The architect did.
okay, so
So
this plan is, there, where does he? To do this plan, where would a variance be requested for this chimney site or for this right here? Well, isn't this 35 feet high?
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, Dylan, but. It's
Oh,
this, it's right here. So this roof line right here. What's,
This line, these 2 points are the same, are they?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
point
it's
and
just
that point, so that's like 6 inches, is that what we're talking about?
because. See, he's using this line right here, he should be using this line right here, and so this line. What does this line do? Don't-
That looks like it's 35 feet to this.
Well, but it should be down here. On the front end, and it should be down here on the back. Or down here at the back, whatever we're doing on the back.
I don't know, that's what I didn't understand on the ordinance. Because it's supposed to be finished or natural grade.
But finish and natural grade
Natural grade.
at the perimeter, but it's at the perimeter of the structure. And so this line is gonna drop right there,
So.
and it's gonna drop, right here, which is gonna exaggerate this non-compliance.
So you're saying that at this point, the variance is limited to the east elevation, the roof of the east elevation? Or the roof on the main?
Yeah.
Right here,
Yeah, the highest
how
piece
much?
on the east side,
Yeah, the only place that it's not compliant.
that corner.
So okay, that would be the northeast corner of the structure, or southeast, southeast, right?
You got a site plan in here?
That is the,
Northwest corner.
Well, north ought to be downhill.
no, it's the southwest corner.
It's this corner right here, isn't it this corner, or no, this,
No,
Okay, this is north,
here.
this is here,
oh, this, okay.
this is east.
This-
Well, this gable, this end of the house right here,
So we're talking about the west,
Northwest.
Southwest.
Northwest.
north is that way.
right, north is that way and west is that way.
So tell me. Where we're going at.
Northwest corner right here, isn't that northwest?
I can call, we're all calling the stairs, calling that the northwest corner, this being the northeast corner.
Yeah.
How much, how far is that out there?
Without this being accurate, I mean, I can go get a scale, but we can see how far we're off right here. And how far we're off right here, because this is gonna lower this end of the line that much. And this is gonna lower this end of this line that much.
So you're saying we might be going in something more like that.
So it's essentially the difference of the lower end of this line here. But it's set back a little bit from two.
You want a scale?
Yeah.
What's your scale?
Quarter inch equals a foot.
So it's this line here?
Yeah.
Are we saying to here or here?
So that's the perimeter.
So that's gonna be,
Perimeter.
but you'd have to take it in here, we, or no? I mean, if you're
I'm
going to
just saying
35,
your high point, right?
But if this line's from on here, that's not an issue. That's not right here.
Because this would come across.
High point.
well, but if it comes, questions if it. Let's take it off of the place where I, and then say, I don't have it. Don't. You can do it.
So,
Okay, is it here?
well, this is what I'm looking at.
So it's measured from the highest point straight down
Okay.
perpendicular to where it intersects this line.
Oh, I
What intersects the grade,
That's
the grade plane. So the grade plane is 1.5 feet too high. And then the grade plane up here It's about a foot and a half, the same.
So going up from your grade plane here, 35 feet, where does that take it? Where the roof's come?
Makes it a foot and a half lower than the line actually is. Yeah. Basically, we're saying that in order to make this work, he needs a foot and a half variance.
In the northwest corner. Westwards. That correct? All the other.
Everybody else
Sides.
is in.
And height is,
I would agree. Yeah.
I'm sorry to add to that detail, but this is the kind of detail that I would have expected. Let's see. He's identified that for now. Okay, will you also tell me what you talked about in terms of? No, that one yet. Of certain comments of how he can comply strictly.
Well, strict compliance would require that you do a hip on this in the house.
Okay, now we bring it down.
So instead of it looking like where's that? Well, this right here, instead of this being a gable end, so these are attic trusses.
No. Just regular truss.
Instead of these trusses having a gable end over this window, you'd have a hip over this window like you have a hip like this.
So he has a hip elsewhere.
On the house,
That's this way.
that's just part of the roof, like channels for the garage.
Oh, you're looking at because the house is like this.
Yeah.
On an angle, so that's a gable also.
So it would be a modification of the roof line in the north side,
Northwest corner.
northwest corner or the whole, whether, can you do that in the northwest corner without having to redo the whole line? Yeah. Why would you not do this? What hardship involves?
So that's what it's doing, is kind of pull up.
Yeah, it won't pull up what we share, but. When you have this steep of a driveway, you run the risk of then having to be flooded.
That's dealing with the driveway, not even the entrance.
Well, the house has to go down in order to meet the slope of the driveway.
It's just
Unless
saying
it doesn't- Yeah.
Well, but first, so that was, so what he's done, in order to force this to work, what he's done is he's lowered the house, or he's kept the house lower to meet the height requirement, or to get closer to meeting the height requirement, but he's had to raise the garage to maintain the driveway, so the driveway isn't too steep. So the garage is already on structural fill. You don't have a site plan? You don't have a site plan?
Yeah, it's in here. It's probably like roughly, I think. It's roughly, it's in here.
Well, but this one doesn't show any of the grades. So the garage, in order to maintain
The grade, I understand that.
max, or in order to achieve the maximum 15% slope.
And I'm assuming that the 15% is through this part.
Yeah, it's all right here.
In order to maintain that, he's had to maintain, lift the garage up to comply with the driveway slope. And then to try to comply with the building height, he's had to keep the house down low.
I understand that.
The issue that creates for me, I mean, and take off my hat for a minute. The issue that creates for me is it puts the whole house lower and increases the risk of flooding. We've already had, we've already had a debris flow across the property. A few years ago, we had a cloudburst and it washed a gully off the mountain.
So in that case, you should be talking about raising the whole thing 2 feet. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I would prefer now. He and I talked about it, and I don't know, obviously, we didn't get very far because the plans still show the house down 2 feet lower
Then the garage.
than the garage. But as far as the risk to the house, I would prefer bringing that house up another 2 feet. So instead of being a 1.5 variance. Instead of being a 1.5 variance. I would rather see the house come up. I would rather see the house come up higher so that you have more slope. Out here in the front yard, you have more slope away from the house to get water out and around the house. Instead of it coming down the driveway and then the house being right in the way.
Okay.
I don't know how to.
No, what I'm asking you the question is, you're saying you probably grant even a higher one,
Oh, I would.
but the point is your ordinance doesn't say that. And if you grant this one for this because it's down and steep, how isn't that just wholesaling cutting out your ordinance? Because you've got slopes, you've got steep slopes on a lot of lots that are
Right.
still not constructed.
Right.
And
Okay, I mean, to that, I would say anybody that's as close to the mountain. Anybody that's as close to the base of the mountain as these guys are. I would do everything I could to keep from flooding filling the basins with
well,
mud.
sure, but you don't want to flood any basements on any lot
Right,
in the city.
Right.
And that's what your ordinance does. So it seems to me that you're talking about. The proposal is one is involving a variance in one portion of the house. That can bring it into compliance as opposed to. And he may be able to involve by doing here, he could do it, it's a different roof line. On a portion and bring it into compliance.
I mean, that's true, you could make the whole flat, you can't make it flat because if it's
I'm
flat.
not talking about the drive, I'm talking
No, I'm
about,
talking about the house and the
Yeah.
roof of the house. You could make the roof flat. That creates all of its own problems, but
well, flat roof, this is hardly a flat roof.
I think what she's.
I'm saying you could, if you could go to the other extreme and say, do a flat roof.
I'm
but-
not asking, I'm saying
Yes.
the roof is part of there, is that,
But the part we're looking at is a compromise
well,
between him and the city. And what's being proposed.
I understand that, but the ordinance doesn't. Compromise on school debate.
But there's variance. Allowance.
There is, and there's, but I'm not, I see a variant, I mean, if I had to make a finding right now. I think that the driveway one is not, I think that's. Makes sense. You have a reason to come across that line, it doesn't impact your neighbor, it doesn't do damage to the general plan. And if you had to let everybody that's got a sneak stuff like that exceeded that area, I don't think that that puts a damper on much of the general plan. But. And I have to look and say, could he come into strict compliance? And you're saying with the modification of the roof, he could.
Well, no.
No?
With the modification, with the elevation of the main floor. 2 feet lower than the garage, then yeah, he can meet the strict requirement.
Well, that's what his permit is for being 2 feet. You're s-
Sorry, sorry.
I'm saying this plan. That is proposed. Can meet it with a hip roof. Or an adjustment to the roof line. Is that fair?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
But,
You're saying that you would like to bring,
well, again, I was trying to talk him into bringing the house up. I was trying to talk him into asking for a variance a bigger variance that would allow him to bring the house up. So that there was a better slope away from the house to protect the house.
And if that came out, how much of that, have you played with that?
Not really.
Well,
We tried our hardest to get it under that 35.
Okay.
but what's the elevation of the garage floor and the elevation of the main floor?
I have to follow up on the-
Have you got another site plan? So whatever the main floor elevation is compared to the garage elevation, I would rather see the main floor elevation a foot and a half.
You run the same, right?
I would rather see the main floor elevation a foot and a half higher than the garage slab. So you have the top of the foundation is minimum 6 inches higher than the garage slab. And then the house, the floor framing sits on top of the foundation.
The final grade elevation on the back is 5693. The front of the house is 5698. It's 3 feet higher.
That, yeah, there.
I understand, he's saying raise the house above the grade of the driveway, isn't it on this one?
Yes. Right up here, your first floor is at 0.
Let's go to this, it's kind of easier to see them. Talking about right here.
So. Where's your first floor? First floor is 0, garage is 2 feet. So first floor elevation is 0. Top of foundation is a foot lower than the main floor elevation. And the garage is 2 feet higher. I'd rather see this a foot higher, a foot and a half higher than the garage floor.
Can you modify that,
You,
that's the fact, either way, because I understand, even if this is raised.
Well, I
the problem is it's
scroll
still
to
in the back.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get us to do up there.
But with the change in the roof line or the back hip line for the dissolve,
It's on this one.
you're gonna make fun of it. That's.
That makes. Makes all of that non-compliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, but that's only the hip with the main floor,
Down lower.
still at the main floor at this elevation.
you know. But
So this is this roof line used to come out right here. So from the chimney, right behind the chimney, he's cut that off, and it's 612, 1012.
8, 10, 12.
So this slope right here is at an 812 pitch, so he's cut this off. Probably from that bead line right there. In this drawing.
oh, sorry. So that's about roughly from here. But you look to me about range.
No, he's cut that whole thing off. He's cut that whole thing off from this.
So that's what looks like in the back.
On the side, you got a side view.
Is this the one we're looking at?
Oh, hey, look at us.
I know, it just took me, is it the 9/15/22 one?
She looks like she's got this hold up here too. So you can see that.
Oh, this is the southern, the north.
The north end looking south.
So you've taken this roof line right here. This used to be a gable end right here.
Now go all the way out here.
and then do a little dorm roll over them. And that works. The only problem with that, Dylan, is that creates ice damming right here, especially on the northwest side of the house. I mean, not that can't be fixed, because you can keep going, you're on the front of the house now. Keep going,
Okay, let me,
keep going. No, this plan hasn't been updated.
Yeah, this is the 9/15/22 one, which one do you want?
I think it's 10/3/22.
Yeah.
I just put it in there. And,
Yep, I'm pulling it right now.
because Corbett, if I were to grant what you're recommending. Any property owner coming in, that means any plans that you approve, you shouldn't allow the house to be lower than the garage. For the,
Well, I mean, and to that defense, I would say anybody that's in a debris flow.
well, anybody that's down the slope is gonna do, I mean, under your theory.
Well, yeah, but
Because of the way the canal or the
sloping
shoots
mountain.
from the mountain, there's only really a handful of homes in the
So
city.
the gullies that come off of the mountain. The gullies that come off the mountain only come off where they come off, and it's not, and by the time you get out over so the whole city is built on an alluvial fan. All the dirt that used to be up there, all the mountain that used to be on there, now it's come out, and as it comes out, it slows down and flattens out. Well, these guys are over here up against the mountain, are still in the risk of the debris flow coming off the mountain. And so,
So for you, from the circumstances, is, it sounds as though you're advocating that the unusual circumstances are not the steepness of the lot. But because they can comply with the lot by sinking it in. Countervailing factor of that is that it makes it more vulnerable to,
absolutely, and I would say absolutely.
and
Can you go back to the first page, Jody? Real quick.
so it seems to me, am I correct,
Keep
that
going.
you are encouraging,
Um,
you would have to be
Next
encouraging
one.
finding that anybody that's in the debris flow
So,
should have to make sure that the structure is above the driveway.
we make it now. Since that debris flow, we make everybody. We make them deal with it. And so those that have to, I mean, well, I mean. What's that guy that's doing so now we require a natural hazard assessment. And they have to deal with the natural hazards.
In the planning.
Yeah, no,
In
not in
construction.
just the plating, but in construction of home, because we already have all of these lots that have been approved. That didn't compensate for the natural hazards. And so now we require a natural hazard assessment. And we got a guy right now that is complaining because he's spending $40,000 to do a surface fault rupture study. Because there's known splays, there's known fault lines that cross his building envelope. Now, if that would have been considered in the first place, the developer never would have been able to call that a building envelope and make it a buildable lot because of the fault line that goes through that property. And so now they have to deal with, and you can
You can just sign around if I
you
get
can
it.
have anything in this world with money, right? Sorry. It's a good saying, all right? It's a good phrase. And so what they have to do is they have to deal with it. A guy down at the bottom, Robert Nelson, who's the developer down at the bottom, he lost a building lot because of the fault line that goes through my property.
Okay.
This guy, he doesn't have the option because he bought the lot as is, and so now he has to design the structure to make up for the fault line.
Mitigate hazard.
You know, and so that's on a fault. The debris flow is much the same way. I mean, we got guys that are building now that can't have windows on the back of the house because of the debris, because they're in the path of the debris flow. Now, if they want to, they can't leave their property to mitigate, they have to do it all on site. And so what they're doing is they're waiting for it to get to them, and then they're dealing with it. So the back wall of the house is designed to handle the impact of the mud hitting the back of the house. And they can't have any windows. And so since the debris flow that came off the mountain, and the debris flow came off and went down these guys' driveway right here. It came off, it is. Who's how?
Roche?
You know, who?
Roche?
That's Roche right there.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
It came off and went in between these two properties.
Okay, but he's on lot 92, so you're saying.
Oh, no, it went down this guy's driveway, so it came down and went between these. It went down this guy's driveway. Now, this guy, he dealt with it. He put a curb, when he redid his driveway, he put a curb on his driveway. On the downhill side of the curb to keep the mud from overflowing the driveway. And keep the mud on the driveway to take it down and go around the side of the house. Dylan's got less of an opportunity for that because this is the low side. This is this guy's low side trying to get into the driveway. Well, Dylan's low side is over here. And so his house is the first thing that the mud comes to. And so to have the house back in here, to have the house in this portion 2 feet lower than the garage, to me is just not a good, it's not a good idea. Now, okay, how do you deal with it? You have a wall around your house that restricts you from access to the house, but deals with the mud, and I think that in itself is. Can I say it's unreasonable?
You can say whatever you want. We've got a councilman here. You probably got to change your ordinance or put something in about it.
I'm trying to keep that hat on here.
So to me, to have the house 2 feet lower than the garage is just not a good idea. Because of where he's at.
And that you are recommending that in this case, because of the debris flow. That it would make more sense, not because of the slope, but because of the debris flow. That it would make more sense. To
Granted,
grant a variance for height. To raise it above the garage level.
correct. I mean, I don't care if you fill your garage with mud, if that's easy, I mean, I do, but it's a lot easier to deal with than filling a house.
I mean, I just need to know what your recommendation is. 'Cause
Yes. But if that's the best way to say it, then that's what I'm saying. I would rather see the house, I would rather grant a variance. To get enough of a variance to get that house higher than, to get the foundation wall. Higher than the garage slab. To protect the house from a debris flow that we have had in the past.
There's another aspect too. Is that this house is already gonna be low. And so it's not gonna be towering over other homes. It won't appear that so much.
So you're saying it's not impacting because it's below grade,
It's,
and I mean, it's below.
Lower than the road.
Road,
yeah,
site limitation, and obviously there's a 10 to 20 foot. Scape, I mean, you know.
Elevation change.
No, the trees,
Oh,
streetscape,
right.
excuse me, I'm just thinking of the
Right.
word, the streetscape, so that it doesn't stick up. Well, I mean, that it will
it doesn't
buffer,
appear to be excessive.
it will buffer it. I came today. After reading it. Thinking that. I was surprised, well, but I wasn't sure because. Your application didn't have the cross sections to show where the variance was, it didn't demonstrate how or why. It was there or why it was requested. It sounds as though you have found some things to perhaps mitigate it, but you also have. An advocate in the city planner of saying that there are strict compliance will cause other problems. That are difficult, and that the height, the additional height. In this particular case, is less destructive to the overall plan than requiring what the strict compliance by pushing it down into compliance. And until you talked about the debris flow, I was not finding any unusual circumstances about the structure. It was shared by a large majority of the lots that had not been built upon in the city. And the streetscape in the slopes design requirement, and so trying to put a flat building permit that would be great wherever it was flat is not necessarily sensitive to what's trying to be accomplished here in Midland Hills, where you do have slopes. And that's the marketing feature, is that you do have slopes and you have great streetscapes.
Can I also mention, as far as the debris flow, the city is trying. We spent $3.2 million, and a lot of it was grant monies. I mean, a portion of it was a 90% grant. Another portion of it was a 75% grant. So roughly we spent $600,000 on buying. We had to purchase in that case, there were two vacant lots that were at the mouth of the gully. It's further south on the mountain, on the face of the mountain. So we bought two vacant lots that were up against the mountain. And then we bought two other building lots that were down further, and we built a basin and did a bunch of channel work to the tune of $3.2 million. We don't
mitigate
to mitigate the debris flow. We don't have that option here because all of the properties between this lot and the debris are already built on. I mean, the guy that got it first got. I mean, how much did Tom get in his basement? We fill up his basement.
I don't think you want to say.
Okay. So.
The mountain filled up
Did
his
the mountain
basement.
fill up I mean, the mountain filled up his basement. Mountain filled up his basement with debris. And it makes me pretty nervous. Because we don't have the opportunity to do mitigation like we did on the other, further side. And so anything that we can do Dillon's the last one to be built. On the corner over there. Well, in that debris flow, in that specific debris flow that hit Tom Beaton, this is the last thing we bought.
Another variable here is, so Dillon submitted plan and was approved to build 6 years ago. But situations arose that they decided to postpone, and so then between then and now, our building height ordinance was changed.
How it's calculated.
How it was calculated, yes. And so that's one other variable here, so he started from plans that were approved plans. And now he's, and they've changed a little bit, quite well, substantially, right? But, so running from that understanding of paradigm to now, the current ordinance has, and also we've noticed, how do I say this without putting on my other hat? That ordinance, the new ordinance could use some amendments.
Tweaking.
Am I allowed to say it that way?
Well, it's a lot stricter than the ordinance.
Well, it is stricter, and that doesn't mean that it means amending or it doesn't, but.
Well, the hardest
it
part
makes
is
it
that,
hard that there's a shift.
yes, so like, for
It's just an
instance,
analysis.
my home's just right here, right above the city building. I don't know if you drove past it, it's a White House, probably.
Drove across that street, I guess. By mine, is that
Yes, I know. The building height ordinance would never have even been a problem at all for me, because I live on the upside of the street. Also because my home's, it's a ranchish kind of style home, and so it's not, it wasn't an issue. But what we have found in the city is for downhill homes is extremely restrictive.
Difficult to comply.
Well, I'm assuming that you knew that when you drafted it,
No,
because.
We did not.
we didn't know what the ramifications would be.
We mean,
We know it's
Different
better than
council.
the old.
Okay. Because every city council has the right to make choices and to make changes. and every property owner to vest their rights. Had you built and they changed it, you would have had a building permit that's good for what, a year, how long, 18? How
2
long?
years as long as
2
I have
years.
an inspection every 100
Yeah,
years.
you have I mean, that permit protects you, because I've been in a city where people hurried and got when they knew that there was a plan coming change that would dramatically change what they could do, and the only way you get vested, I've had to litigate that issue, and the only way you get vested is by having a building permit that's submitted and is kept active and is active. And so, while I appreciate the fact that it would have been nice, in this case, that's,
Yeah, but more, I was just
Yeah.
giving historical
yeah,
context of the law.
and so, so I. So I'm going to grant this in parts. Okay. First one is I'm to mitigate what you could do for the slope of the driveway. I'm granting variance to grant the setback that's been granted elsewhere. Probably may need to be granted in the future. But the recommendation is that one is not, does not do harm to the general plan. And that from that standpoint, if there are others coming to decrease that slope to meet requirements, that's one that I think would be, that I don't have any problem with at all. Okay, and I would grant that. The part about the circumstances, to me, the slope in terms of setting the plot, I mean, the elevation for the house. Just the slope itself is not an individual circumstance. It's all over the city. The difference that was brought up by your building department is the fact that you're concerned with the hazard of the debris flow. I mean, and their recommendation that in fact to mitigate that hazardous flow, which now would have been addressed on the subdividing on the plot basis, can't be done. And the way that very real hazard can be addressed is better addressed by granting a variance to allow the heights to be raised in that portion of the building than would be accomplished by district construction. The amount of that variance, I'm going to leave for you to work out with the building department, but it should not exceed what is talked about, has been talked about in terms of branding. That, and whether that's a foot above the level, or is there a magic difference? We're talking about raising
The main floor.
the main floor above the slab of the garage slab. And so the variance is granted is dependent upon grading up.
I mean, that would put the house, that would put the roof of the house roughly 4.5 feet.
Out in that particular one.
But that would mean that he would have to agree that the house is not going to, or that the main, I mean, I guess I'm being a little selfish as far as trying to protect the city and the city's interest, because if we get a debris flow, then the city gets drug into a lawsuit.
That's right, so if he wants to have an additional height, you raise it because of to protect yourself against the debris flow, because that's what the circumstances that's justifying any variation in my opinion about the height. And so if you choose not to raise it, comply. If you want to raise it,
Well, so I don't have to raise it, because I'm not gonna raise it.
Well, then you don't get the variations, so then you need to,
Comply
you need to comply
with the hip gable.
with bringing it down. It has to be in strict. I mean, the evidence has been is that you can bring that into strict compliance
With the hip gable.
with the hip gable or whatever by modification of the roof line. And so what I'm saying is I don't find I don't find those circumstances to be the one that justify the variance. The debris flow, I believe does. And, but the debris flow recommendation is if you're gonna solve it, is that you need to raise the slab
You need to raise the main floor
above the,
above the garage slab.
is it foot?
I would say, but
So the house is higher than the garage.
no, yeah, so the house is, so the garage main floor of the house is 1.5 feet higher than the garage slab. I mean, you could always lower the house as long as the foundation was a minimum of 6 inches higher than the garage slab, which would be 2.5 feet higher than it currently is.
I'm not sure I got those numbers correct.
Here's the garage slab.
Okay, that's good.
Right now, the main floor is 2 feet lower than the garage slab.
Let's just be clear, so we just do that better than. So that when he walks away, he knows what his person there. Okay,
So the main floor, the first floor is 2 feet
below the garage level.
below the garage slab. So in order for the foundation and this, so top of foundation is 1 foot lower than main floor.
So it's
So
only
in order-
count of 3,
Yeah, so the garage, the foundation would need to be 3 feet higher than it currently is to be, or
And
3.5 feet, 3.5 feet higher for the foundation
getting-
wall to be 6 inches higher than the garage.
Mr.
slab.
Dewey, are you coming in and seeing what we're talking about?
Yeah, you understand, I understand, we just have to recommend basically even have 12-foot ceilings in the basement.
I don't know what that means to you, but you get to work with it, at least that choice. So you're talking about the variance from my concern to justify is based on the debris flow and mitigating that damage. And by doing that, it requires this to come up so that the foundation and 3.5 feet or up the foundation 6 inches above the garage slab.
So the foundation, top of foundation is 6 inches higher, you take 3.5 feet of elevation difference than it is currently drawn at.
So foundation is 6 inches higher
Than the garage slab,
than the garage slab.
but. So if we go through this exercise. And you grant him a variance, he doesn't have to take it.
No, but he has to comply.
So you either comply as is, and that looks like it's gonna take a hip roof on the back of the house. Or you take advantage of the variance and
Raise it.
And I'm giving him a variance
so,
for the drive.
so he still has a choice.
He still has a choice.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. Justifying the run for the entry to coming in for the drive. Because those things and the planning bill basically that has very minimal impact. On the plan, and I could do that to every building permit and it wouldn't make the council mad.
Well, we're not selling our soul.
No,
We're not
I
selling
know.
our soul by loan because
Saying-
it's justified.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's, but I have to go and say, am I granting here? Am I willing to grant that in similar cases? And there's a lot of similar cases out there, and I still feel good about the variance. And if the council gets mad about that, they'll change the ordinance, or
So,
they'll get rid of me as being council.
so you guys take both. And then do whatever makes sense for you. And obviously finances is a big part of it, right?
But that's,
So-
but see, the financial part of it, if by statute, is not a hardship.
No, but
that I
for
would-
them
That's
to
fine.
either comply as is or accept the variance and go that way
It's your choice.
is their choice, and finances are gonna make a difference to them, how,
Okay.
on what they do.
You know, and they're,
Whether they take advantage of the variance or they
Or
just
not.
comply.
and they comply, because I can't find they can't certainly comply.
Exactly.
I think you can comply on getting it. And so, does that make Sense. We didn't split the baby.
No, I think this is helpful.
So, and that's why, Jody, when I say I think that we need to have these kinds of hearings in person, is because this kind of interaction, this kind of interaction really happened, or it's been very difficult. Because having to have Corbett here and the planning department here with Wayne, they know what they can comply with and live with and feel good about for this property as well as others. And it gives you options and choices. Any questions?
So
So
what does the variance look like?
It will look like two different parts. One will deal with the driveway. And I'm going to grant a variance to be able to invade something, but to go encroach into that required side yard setback for the driveway to exit onto the road.
Is,
I'm not.
I'm still trying to talk him, I haven't tried, but I still want to try to talk him into getting that driveway slope to less than 15%.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm granting a variance to encroach into the side yard setback.
How much?
I'm not putting a limit on it.
That's what I was getting at. Because if they're encroaching 15 feet into that 20-foot setback, and if they can encroach 20 feet into that 20-foot setback and get a driveway down to 14%, I want to try to talk them into that.
I am not going to put a limit on
Okay.
that encroachment because you've got to design it and you've got to architecturally done it. And you've also got an example where you went to the property line before.
Okay.
So I don't see that. I see that being a design architectural issue. We do it to mitigate grade and keep them in grade. The part about the structure that in terms of variance of the height, I can't find a circumstance other than the debris flow that would justify having a variance in the height. With that though, which was not right, I mean, it's not only came to the attention of that justified, but a part of that is the protection of the debris flow is that the house needs to come up. And I'm granting you a variance to do that, if you choose to do that. If you don't do that, it's strict compliance.
But to grant the variance,
He's got to get a plan approved by you.
but the variance, can the variance be contingent on the top of the foundation being minimum 6 inches above
Yes.
the garage septic?
When I've written that would be part of it.
Right.
Because we need the reason justifying the height also requires raising the structure. For your benefit. Part of my reasoning on that is that's not going to apply in very many other cases. And so that's more a site by site basis than a debris flow. And if we're allowing you to do something because of the debris flow, we want to protect you from the debris, from that debris flow. Okay. And you'll just need to work that out with the planning department in those two basis.
So
I
it's-
don't need to see it again.
Is there a maximum height they can encroach?
Well, they
in?
can't exceed the height that they proposed. So if that's going up 3.5 feet. that-
Well, but it's actually at 5 feet because.
Well, it might be, but I'm saying they
Okay, I'm
can't,
just-
that the levels and the height of the proposed building that they could make comply. If they go up, those levels go up. I mean. We're not gonna hold the 3.5 feet that we're. Saying if you're gonna raise it, you gotta raise it 3.5 feet at least.
But you can't exceed what?
You can't exceed the length,
Because
the
right
height
now,
of this.
they're 1.5 feet too high. Because we redid that reference line. And then if we raise the main floor another 3 feet or another
So it's going to add
3.5 feet, another 3.5 feet, it's gonna be a total of 5 feet of they're gonna be 5 feet. So is there a limitation?
Well, I don't want any more additional, I'm not approving any more additional.
We can't repitch that.
Shoot, I think 5 feet to big apartment. It's like-
Then it's 5 feet, so we're not gonna let them go more than 5 feet. Is what I'm asking. I
You're
just,
not gonna let them go more than the 3.5 feet that they need to bring out.
Current design with the main floor 6 inches above the garage slab.
but,
Right.
but,
Oh, but they're,
but what I'm saying is that current design. And then 3.5 feet additional is 5 feet of non-compliance, or a 5 foot encroachment in that height, not the
and that's
3.5.
what you recommended.
Well, no, that's what I'm trying
That's
to
the
clarify.
variance you're approving.
I don't want to recommend anything that isn't defensible, but
Well,
what I'm saying is the current plan is 1.5 feet too
half
tall
in the
already.
one part, in the hip roof.
Yeah, in that
And
one
that's,
spot.
and if they don't do it, they have to strictly comply.
Right. But if we bring the house, if we grant the variance on the condition that they get the main floor higher than if we grant the variance on the condition that they get the foundation 6 inches, minimum 6 inches higher than the garage slab. That's gonna make that current design 5 feet too tall
At that corner.
At that point,
at that corner. Well, but. I mean, but we haven't seen what that other 3.5 feet is gonna do. Well, no, that second line that I drew is 5 feet. And so that's-
Will still be in compliance with
No,
35 feet.
no,
There's a few little monkeys, but
You don't think so?
no. So that's, so the second line that I drew here. This line makes this lower roof non-compliant, it makes this gable non-compliant, and you can't hit back that far. You can only hit the.
I understand that, but you're asked, this ordinance is dealing with the debris. Where they would be entitled under the ordinance to sink it.
Right, but they would have to hit this portion of the
I
roof. to
understand
make it
that.
comply.
But they would, well, if they sink it farther, they could sink it 5 feet, but it creates a problem with the other parts. The ordinance doesn't preclude how far they sink it, right?
Right, it can go as deep as you want, I'll give you all the money you can handle.
I know, and that's what I'm saying is
Right.
that the ordinance, they can strictly comply, they can take it. I'm sorry.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is if we're gonna put a limitation on the variance, we're gonna allow a variance of no more than 5 feet.
That's correct. They're allowed to bring this slab from this plan up to 6 inches above the top of grade foundation.
Right, but what that does
Is
is
with the other part up.
it makes this roof non-compliant, it makes this gable this gable is on the back porch is
Probably
non-compliant.
takes it up to right there.
you're.
Yeah, that's,
saying
yeah,
that's
this
what you're doing
line.
here.
Do you want?
That's what I'm saying is if the variance will allow them to encroach into the height restriction
Yes.
no more than 5 feet. On the I'm okay with that as long as the stipulation is that we don't just make the roof taller, but we get the top of foundation 6
Oh.
inches higher.
They don't, if they don't raise the slab.
If they don't get the foundation, top of foundation is
top
higher
of
than the
foundation
garage
6
slab.
feet, They gotta comply.
Okay.
Get proof.
All right.
If they bring it up, the incentive is.
Raise the-
Raise the roof. I mean, I mean, not literally, but in a sense, it saves the city the issue of buying property at the base of the mountain and building a debris basin to try to protect this house and all the other houses. I mean, if we can get each house to protect itself, then we'll let the mud flow and you can clean up your front yard. And
And you can look out your tall window.
Thank
No,
you.
I do, no, do you understand where I'm coming from?
I was just trying to make sure that it was clear that we're allowing an encroachment of up to no more than 5 feet. As long as
As long as
they'll
it's
do
above
more
slab.
to protect the structure,
That's
bringing the top of the foundation.
It's an incentive for them to provide protection they wouldn't be required by giving them a benefit that they don't, that they're not entitled to.
Okay,
And that's an equation that you can determine whether you like. I can't find that the difference of designing a hip roof is a hardship, because that doesn't qualify. And in this case, anyway, I think we've gone through that enough that you understand where we are and where I come from and what I've authorized. Any questions about that, Mr. J?
No, I understand.
Okay. Okay, because you guys are gonna have to be the ones that make those decisions and work them out, because you're gonna have to get it approved, your permit approved by Corbett.
But under these guidelines, under the guidelines of the variance,
Under the guidelines of the variance, which means that they can encroach into the side yard on the side plan or the driveway. I'm not granting a variance of the slope. They did ask for it.
Right.
But that they can solve that by by going into the slope where it's been done in other places. Okay. And you may want to, ask the council to give you that kind of approval, but I'm giving the variance for this case.
driveways are too steep, 15% is too steep in this, already 15% is too steep. If it was up to me, it'd be maximum 10%.
We'll see, and that may raise it and he may do his things again, but, that's what I'm saying. Is I'm giving you that one, you can work it out if you choose to. And secondly, when I'm giving you the option to bring it up, either comply or to bring it up and protect your own property and have it in the car. Questions?
Can I go now?
Yes, and Corbett, but that's the kind of discussion that we needed, Corbett.
Okay.
Of doing these, and that's why the cross sections are so important.
Okay, so this is done. So
This is
for,
that what happens now is
Well-
Jody knows that I made my decision, I put it on the line. There are two variances. One for the encroach into the side yard. Up to the property line, depending and keeping that grade. At grade or less. And secondly, raising the slab of the main house so that it's.
raising the
six-
top of the foundation.
Raising the top of the foundation 6 inches above the slab of the
Garage.
garage. Of the same structure, which would give you variance of up to 5 feet. Or if you choose not to, then strictly comply.
So for us, how do we make this easier next time?
Well,
Do a better job of cross section. I'm seeing that would have helped
yes.
better.
Absolutely,
cross-sections.
any application comes in, there was no discussion about. Height, where the height was off, there were no cross sections, where the height, if there's a variance where it's required,
I mean, this is only the
second,
variance that you've
For me,
done, the
that-
third one that we've done as a city like this.
okay. So
We're
having
still learning.
cross, but
We're still learning. is what I
no,
think.
and I think that comes through the thing is you need to have an application that gives you the cross sections to identify what it is exactly they're looking for. It was not clear when they talked about the setback, which setback they were talking about for the drive. And their hook was, the steepness, well. That may have applied to the steepness and it was actually for the grade, for the driveway, but doesn't affect, in my opinion, isn't unusual at all. That is kind of a characteristic of any downslope lot. And having cross sections so that you come and you know exactly, and so everybody knows exactly.
So does that cross section need to include strict compliance as well as the variance for the?
Well, you can anticipate, at least for me, I'm gonna say, what's necessary to bring it into strict compliance? And have they done any actions to mitigate? Which I did, but none of that was, in the application.
I think depending upon the variance being asked for, we, the city, should put a checklist together for the applicant. So it's clear to them the kind of information that they need to provide, depending upon the variance being.
Well, frankly, and we're off the record now.
No, we're not.
Oh.
So if you want to close it, then I
Yeah,
will go
we'll
ahead.
Close that hearing, except there's an individual. Were you here, hearing?
No.
No.
Okay, then let's close that hearing. Actually, close it as the discussion after I